Story 56.
David and Goliath.
Words we know.
8. 8th. 18th. 9. 90. 90th. Watch. Washing. Wander. Defy. Defend. Defeat. Intend. Intending. Intention. Fright. Frighten. Frightening. Enquire. Admire. Require. Ground. Found. Round. Pension. Tension. Courage. Commanded. Demanded. Refused. Caged. Staged. Enraged. Believe. Achieve. Achievement.
New sounds.
I as in find. Find. Kind. Behind. Bind. Mind. Grind. Blind. Remind. Crisis. Goliath. 9th. Climb. Lion. Final. Giant. Philistines. Defiant. Climax. Mild. Wild. Silent. Violent. Trial. Child. Find some words in the story with this I sound.
Special words.
Occurrence. Warrior. Soldiers. Pierced. Armor. Honor. Youth. Courage. Fields. poured, seized, stalk, quality, weapon, descend. Before attempting to read the story, learn how to say each special word. If necessary, check its meaning. Make up a sentence using each special word. David and Goliath. A long time ago, in the land of Israel, there lived a boy called David. He was the youngest in his family, the 8th brother, or the 9th male, if you counted his father, Jesse. From the time he was very young, David worked alongside his older brothers. He went with them into the fields to help guard their father's flocks. He climbed the rugged hills and leapt across the rocky streams that wandered through the valleys. David grew strong and brave. He developed a good aim and could hit difficult targets with his sling. David was happy. He sometimes played his harp as he watched his family's sheep. In fact, David became such a good harpist that he was sometimes invited to perform at the court of King Saul, the ruler of Israel. Sometimes a lion or a bear would try to take a lamb from the flock. If David was on guard, he would chase the beast and beat it until it dropped the lamb. And if the wild animal turned on him, he would stand up to it and sometimes kill it. Just a few years later, the armies of the Philistines had assembled with the intention of overpowering the people of Israel, forcing them out of their homes and lands and making them slaves. There was great fear in the ranks of the Israelites. Wild and frightening stories abounded about the conquests of Goliath the giant, the greatest Philistine warrior. Each day, before battle, the soldiers of King Saul's army knelt and prayed to their one and only God, so that he might protect them. David's 3 oldest brothers fought with their king. David's duty, they said, was to remain with his father and guard the flocks. 40 anxious days passed. Jesse wanted some news. "David, my son," said Jesse, "please go to the camp. Take this bread to your brothers and find out what is going on." Tears poured down Jesse's wrinkled old face as he watched his youngest son depart towards the field of battle. David found the enemy armies camped on the top of 2 hills, facing each other. The noise was overwhelming. He jostled his way through the ranks, trying to find his brothers. David had just finished greeting his brothers when a single Philistine soldier came down from the hill opposite. The army of King Saul fell silent. A powerful voice broke the silence and levelled a challenge to the men of Israel. "Who will fight me?" thundered the huge Philistine warrior. The Israelites stood, frozen with fright. "That is Goliath, the giant," whispered David's older brother Eliab. "He is the greatest and most violent of the Philistine warriors. Every day he challenges us to send forth a man to stand against him. No one here has the courage to meet Goliath 1-to-1. "What?" exclaimed David. "Will no man stand against Goliath? How can this be? Our God will give us all we require for victory. You should know this, my brother. I will fight him myself." Eliab was annoyed with David. "Go home to your father," he said. "Your job is to mind the flocks. This is no place for you." Meanwhile, soldiers standing near the brothers had heard David's words. They hurried to King Saul's tent and informed him of all that David had said. The king was hopeful that finally he might have someone willing and able to face Goliath. "Bring this man David to me," commanded Saul. When King Saul saw that the bold man was in fact David, the young harp player, he tried to change David's mind. "This battle is for a soldier who is strong, courageous, experienced, and wise. It will be a trial of all these qualities. Alas, we have no man at this time who gives himself any chance against Goliath," moaned the king. "Young David, I admire your courage, and from the bottom of my heart I thank you. Nevertheless, this duel is not for you." David stood his ground and told King Saul how he had earlier defeated lions and bears. "Our God who supported me against these wild beasts will also save me from this giant," said David, conviction ringing in his voice. Moved by the strength of David's faith, King Saul responded, "Go then, and God be with you." The king commanded that his own armor and sword be brought for David to wear. But David, who knew in his heart that all people must fight their own battles in their own way, graciously refused and said, "I am not experienced in the use of armor and the sword. I cannot use these." David left the king's armor and took up instead his own familiar staff. He gathered also his shepherd's bag and sling. Soldiers watched in fear as he left the safety of the Israelite camp. But David ran lightly. A plan had already formed in his mind. He came to a stream and bent down. He selected 5 smooth stones and dropped them into his bag. A hush descended on the 2 camps. All eyes turned towards the young David. Then Goliath stepped forward to meet him. When Goliath saw how young David was, he scoffed. "You, boy, do you think you can beat me with that stick?" He waited for an answer. "Do you think I am a dog?" he roared. The earth seemed to shake, but David felt confident. Without boasting, he called out for all to hear, "This will be your final battle, Goliath." Enraged by the boy's defiance, Goliath strode towards David, waving his enormous sword. David carefully felt in his bag, selected one of the smooth stones, carefully placed it into his sling and, with all the strength he could gather, hurled it at the Philistine. The huge body of Goliath tottered, swayed, and then crashed to the ground. How could this be? David's expert eye had targeted the exact spot where his enemy's forehead was exposed, beneath his great bronze helmet. While Goliath lay stunned, David seized the giant's own sword and, with one swift blow, put an end to the mighty fighter. The greatest warrior of the Philistines had been killed by a young Israelite. Shocked by this unexpected occurrence, the Philistines turned and ran, leaving the lands of Israel again in peace. King Saul was amazed by what he had witnessed. "I wish you to live no more at your father's house, but instead to come to my court." David went and soon became the best friend of Saul's son, Jonathan. In time, David was given command over one of the king's armies. He was widely honored for his bravery and his achievements. Eventually, David himself became king of all Israel. His son, in turn, became the famous King Solomon.
Words we've used.
Youngest, warrior, wandered, courage, beautiful, soldiers, mountain, violent, defeated, jostled, anxious, horrendous, tension, experience, opposite, gracious, honor, armor, descend, occurrence.
Some new words.
Ascent, ascended, carefulness, graciousness, honoring, honorable, beauty, beautify, defiance, violence.
Read aloud. English expressions. Word. Phrase. Sentence.
Final. One final chance. Michael had one final chance to win the trophy. Occurrence. A frequent occurrence. Thefts from tourists are a frequent occurrence. Quality. Quality products. The next shop has the best quality products. Believe. Sincerely believe. The children sincerely believe he will return. Experience. An unforgettable experience. Spaceflight is an unforgettable experience.